the entire city respects and admires, and especially the Puerto Rican community, since he's Puerto Rican. I'm talking about Miguel del Valle. In 1987, del Valle was elected the first Hispanic senator in Illinois General Assembly. He was the assistant majority leader in the Illinois Senate, and he was the first Latino to hold that position. He was the co-chair of the Illinois Legislative Latino Caucus and was the first Latino member of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus. His leadership in redistricting cases in 1981, 1991, and 2001 led to the creation of the Latino majority districts on the city, county, and state levels. Del Valle is the founder of the Illinois Association of Hispanics, state employees, IASHE, if I didn't pronounce that right, forgive me. He is the co-founder of several Latino organizations, including the Illinois Latino Advisory Council on Higher Education, IASHE, the Alliance of Latinos and Jews, and the Illinois Hispanic Democratic Council, IHDC. He also developed the annual Department of Children and Family Services Hispanic Family Conference. Del Valle was the first Latino male elected to the Illinois Democratic State Central Committee, where he served as a 4-year term. In 2008, he served as an elected Obama delegate at the Democratic National Convention in Denver, where he had a speaking role. In 2006, Miguel del Valle was appointed city clerk of Chicago by Mayor Richard M. Daley. He won a citywide election to the post in 2007, becoming the first Latino elected to the Chicago City Clerk's office. Clerk del Valle is focused on bringing more efficiency and visibility to city clerk services by providing greater access to public records, including webcasting of city council meetings, expanding community outreach programs, modernizing operations to expedite the sale of dog registrations, city stickers, and residential parking. Del Valle was also appointed by Illinois Governor's Pat Quinn on February 8, 2013 to a 5-year term on the Illinois Commerce Commission's ICC. The ICC's mission is to balance the interests of consumers and utilities to ensure adequate, efficient, reliable, safe, and least cost public utility services, while promoting the development of an efficiently competitive energy supplier market. The ICC also oversees transportation activities, including railroad safety, trucking, insurance and registration, relocation and safety towing, and household goods moving companies. After earning a bachelor's and a master's degree in education and guidance from Northeastern, Del Valle served as unit director of the Barreto Boys and Girls Club, and then as an executive director of the Chicago Association House, a non-profit organization providing social services and educational programs on Chicago's northwest side. During this time, as executive director of the Association House, Del Valle was heralded by the Chicago Tribune as an emerging young leader. In 1982, after organizing meetings, rallies, and lobbying Chicago City Council, Del Valle was successful in reinstating city funding for Association House successful job program for unemployed youth. Del Valle is married to Lupe and has 4 children, Miguel Jr., Ivan, Esteban, and Vanessa. Let's welcome Miguel Del Valle with a very strong round of applause.
Thank you very much. I'll have to shorten that bio a bit. But I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon. Coming in a little while ago brought back a lot of memories. And I was sharing some of the history with some of the folks who are here today who were there at the very beginning. I'm looking that way at the guy with the red shirt. And there are a few people here who were here at the very beginning, 31 years ago. And I know that on the website you all used a picture of me, a photo of me, and I looked at it and I says, they're not going to recognize me when I walk in the room, because I don't look like that anymore. I don't look like that anymore. All my hair is gray and it's not much of it left. There's not much of it left. But 31 years has gone by since we had the first gathering of Latino employees in the state of Illinois. And I remember it well because it was a rainy, rainy day. And I was worried that the turnout would be very low because it was just pouring. We held the first conference at I think it was a Holiday Inn in Hillside. And I was so surprised when the place just filled up with people. They were just pouring in. The rain was pouring outside and the people were pouring into the building. And it was just wonderful, and that was the beginning. But I want to back up a little bit and share just some history, because tenemos que saber de dónde venimos, ¿verdad? Para saber para dónde vamos y entender mejor para dónde vamos. We have to know where we've been, where we come from, in order to better understand where we are going. And this all started with the 1980 census. And please bear with me, because I know people get bored with history sometimes. But I have to do this, because we have to understand where we've been, where we're at today, and where we need to go tomorrow, and the next day, and years to come. In the 1980 census, a question on Spanish or Hispanic origin or descent was added to the long-form questions for the first time in 1980. In 1970, this question was asked of only 5% of the population. And it was after the 1980 census, Representative Linda Chapalavia, it was after the 1980 census that MODEF, the Mexican-American Legal Defense and Education Fund, was able to use those census numbers. Even though there was an undercount of Latinos, they were able to use those census numbers to build a case in federal court challenging the legislative districts created by Democrats in the Illinois General Assembly. And as you know, the redistricting process, when districts are created every 10 years, the main goal of those creating the map that has to be approved by the General Assembly, the main goal is self-preservation. People wanting to make sure, as representatives and senators, that they can keep their district and that they can keep their voters and they can keep their institutions and their churches and businesses that support them. They want to keep them in place. They don't want anyone messing with them, because then it jeopardizes their re-election. That's a natural tendency, right? Self-preservation. We can understand that. But Latinos had never, up until that point, elected an individual to the General Assembly. We had Latino employees, just a handful, in a few departments, pretty much reflecting what we have today in terms of the distribution of Latino employees. You know, human services primarily. We had Latino, but we had never had a voice in the Illinois General Assembly. I was elected in 1986 as the first Latino state senator, but in 1982, prior to my election, after that battle in court, in federal court, that we won and created Latino majority districts, just a couple of them in Chicago, there was enough population, just enough to create 65% plus Latino districts. It was in 1982 that the first Latino was elected to the Illinois General Assembly. It was Joe Barrios. And then a few years later, then I ran and became the first elected to the Senate. Joe in the House, I went to the Senate. Though there was an undercount in 1980, we were able to use the numbers of the census to make the case. But besides redistricting, the census was important to us for a bunch of other reasons. The census determines how much federal funding Illinois receives for the next 10 years. It determines how much money school districts get from the federal government. It determines how much higher ed gets, colleges, universities. There are positions that are federally funded within state government. There are jobs created as a result of that. There's money for transportation, for road construction, jobs that are created throughout the state because of that. And all of that is done with the census is a calculation for that distribution. $675 billion are currently now distributed to states annually by the federal government using census data. Businesses use census data to make decisions about where they're going to locate a manufacturing plant, where they're going to locate offices, administrative offices, etc. The George Washington Institute for Public Policy's report, Counting for Dollars 2020, estimates that the undercount of Illinoisans in Illinois in 2010, the last census, the undercount in 2010 resulted in a loss of $952 per person per year of federal funding, a loss of $122 million. That's a lot of funding for health, for roads, for education. It also means we've lost opportunities for jobs, to create jobs across the state of Illinois. And then in the political arena, when we talk about redistricting, not only is the state map created, the congressional map is created. And since 1980, we've lost in Illinois 2 congressional districts. 2. That means less representation in Washington, D.C. Less power, less influence. But having said that, and looking ahead, and continuing to talk here about the census, we have some serious challenges with the next census. Serious. In many respects, much more serious than we've had in the past for the 2020 census. And if some of you are thinking, well, that's a ways off, that's a couple of years away, the Census Bureau has already started hiring people. It's already putting things into place. You can go online and apply for jobs right now with the Census Bureau. The decennial census, and one of the challenges is that the decennial census has not asked a question about citizenship of the entire population since 1950, and it's about to do that now. It's going to ask the question on the forms, are you a U.S. citizen? What do you think that's going to do?
Undercut the numbers.
The Constitution says that you must count everyone who lives here, regardless of status. We must count everyone. And in that count, then you will get the formula that determines distribution of resources and political representation. Well, what's happening? Here's what's happening. The Secretary of Commerce, Wilbur Ross, Trump's appointee, decided to add the citizenship question to the 20 census. The census question decision by Ross, and I'm quoting an article here, was intensely criticized by states with large immigrant and minority populations, as well as immigrant rights organizations, who said it could repress the response rate from minorities of immigrant descent, particularly Latinos. Advocates say the question decision, that's the U.S. citizenship question, could produce an undercount that could significantly alter congressional redistricting as well as the distribution of federal funds. Now, there are about 22 attorneys generals throughout the country that have gone to court, including New York and Illinois. They're challenging this. And I think if the courts do what is right, that we will be able to exclude this question from the census. Because think of it, in this anti-immigrant climate, which is one of the worst that I've experienced in my lifetime, where people are fearful of sometimes taking their kids to school. They don't know where ICE is going to show up. They won't go to court because ICE has been known to go into the courtrooms. The kind of fear in people, good people, is going to lead to them not wanting to participate, being fearful to participate. And the census is going to be done primarily online this time. On the computer at home, you'll be able to take care of your form. You'll be able to go to a library, use the computer there, take care of your form. It is anticipated that school districts, local schools, will cooperate and allow parents access to computers if they don't have online capability to do their census form. It's going to be a whole lot easier to take care of the census this time around as compared to prior years because of technology. And yet, when it's going to be easier, in many respects for us, it's going to be harder because people will be fearful of participating. They don't trust government. And even though it's totally confidential, how many people will we be able to convince that their information will not be used in some way to determine the status of the people living within the household? We've got our work cut out for us. And I'm taking this opportunity because you're important. You come into contact with lots of folks. You have to help us ensure that we get a good count. And hopefully we'll win that case in court. In Illinois, we've gained. Latinos have gained over the last 31 years. We've gained strength primarily because of the growth of the population, which has led to increased Latino representation, increased political influence, and we're today 17.3% of the population. And that's an undercount. Again, those are census figures. Because we gained political representation in the 80s at the state level, we were able to create IASHE. IASHE's accomplishments, for those of you who've been around for a while, you know what those accomplishments are. And those accomplishments were due primarily to the partnership that IASHE had with Latino legislators and other legislators with Latino populations within their districts. The Latino Caucus was created 6 years, many years after IASHE was created. I helped create IASHE in my first year, my freshman year as a state senator. And the Latino caucus wasn't created until 5 years after that. But it was important that the Latino caucus and IASHE work as one in the General Assembly. And it was during that period, during those times when there was that collaboration and ongoing communication, that a lot of things happened, like the legislating of a number of actions that led to the creation of the annual Hispanic Employment Program. I was the sponsor of the bill to create bilingual pay. And I knew that that would be the first hand I got. I knew it. That's why I saved it. Okay, because I'm not a joke teller. But I knew that I would get a hand and a chuckle. But bilingual pay, there's an annual report on bilingual pay. I'll touch on that in just a second. Training, opportunities for upward mobility, leadership, lobby days, influencing the public policy that is generated by the General Assembly, and advocacy. But in spite of the progress, we have not yet achieved parity. You have that report. You have those numbers in front of you. I am dissatisfied, to put it mildly. I don't want to use another word, but I am dissatisfied with these numbers. 31 years later, Latinos make up only 6%, 2,791 of the current coded employees. We're concentrated primarily in the Department of Human Services, 1,200 employees, 219 in DCFS, 9%. DCFS, only 9%. With all those Latino families that need services, only 9% of DCFS employees are Latino. And of course, state agencies, out of that number, the Latino numbers employ nearly, they're reporting 2,000 bilingual employees during FY 2017, over 1,000 of whom work for the Department of Human Services. Half of the bilingual employees that are reported in that bilingual pay report work for the Department of Human Services. What happened to all the other agencies? You're telling me that they don't need Spanish-speaking personnel? That's ridiculous. And yet those are the numbers that are being reported. We know that cultural competency is essential. And we've argued from day one, 31 years ago, that the reason to have Latino employees, most of them bilingual, and I know not all are bilingual, but even those that are not bilingual bring cultural competency to the table. Even if they can't speak the language, they bring the culture to the table. And that makes a difference when you deliver services, when you work with clientele, when you have contact with institutions throughout the state of Illinois. And so those old arguments that we made 31 years ago about the need for fluency, language proficiency, cultural competency, that lead to increased efficiency and effectiveness in serving populations throughout the entire state. Those arguments are still valid today and should be used when we deal with these bureaucracies. But there are newer arguments. Not so new, they've been around for a while. The Treasurer touched on it. You know, we are a growing population that contribute greatly to the economic well-being of this state. We contribute in many ways. There are more Latino businesses than ever before. We have penetrated all of the different sectors, some not enough. I look, for example, at the number of Latino employees with the Department of Innovation and Technology. Innovation and technology. We're in a digital age. We're all promoting STEM education. We all want our kids to be literate, right? In this digital economy. And yet look at the state. 2% of the employees in the Department of Innovation and Technology that is working with all your agencies to upgrade and to make sure that you are just in the digital age, only 2% are Latino. And just like the argument that I used to get, well, you know, you can't hire Latinos out here downstate because they aren't anywhere to be found. You know, now we get the argument, oh, you can't hire anyone to work in a program developing software for an agency or an innovation technology because we can't find them with the qualifications that are required. Well, you know, they are out there. We know they're out there, but it takes a special effort. It takes an extra effort. It takes an effort beyond the call of duty, as the treasurer said. The commitment starts from the top.
Right on.
And that's why I want to leave you with this. I said I was disappointed. I'm also disappointed with our people. I'm disappointed with our people. And my good friend Linda Chapalavia is here. But the Latino caucus, at this time, in my opinion, is weak. Is weak. And that has to change. Because we know that when we look at the accomplishments of IASHE, working in conjunction with the Latino caucus, many things were done. Pressure was exerted. We got results. But that is not happening today. And we need to go back to the kinds of things we used to do when we used to bring in directors before the Appropriations Committee and question the hell out of them about their commitment to Latino hiring.
Yeah.
We need to do that. We need to conduct hearings, Representative. We need to conduct hearings like we did when we pulled in all the city colleges, the community college presidents throughout the state of Illinois, and all the university presidents, and we talked about recruitment and retention of Latino students to produce the professionals of tomorrow, to fill those IT positions that need to be filled. We need to get back to being consistent and persistent and just not letting up. Not letting up. When we step back, things don't happen. When we lean forward and push, things happen. Now, there are no guarantees that we're going to get the results as quickly as we want done. But I do know one thing, that when we do nothing, when we sit back and start to feel hopeless and feel like we have no power, like we just can't affect change, like there's no role for us as individuals in that process of change, when we start to feel like that, nothing happens. The status quo remains. I challenge all the other organizations. I mean, heaven's sake. A Latino Family Commission was established in the state of Illinois and they didn't even get funding.
Wow.
Yeah. Say.
Bad, bad, bad.
I mean, that's beyond insult. How do we tolerate something like that? And if you're thinking, well, Miguel del Valle is being partisan. You know, folks, I started out by saying that we got on the road towards where we're at today when, as Latinos, we challenged a Democratic man. That was our first fight. And since then, there have been several fights with Democrats. But we've also had a lot of fights with Republicans. Because both parties have been unresponsive many times over the years. Both. And so it doesn't matter who is elected governor in the next administration. Whether Rauner is re-elected governor or Pritzker is elected governor. Think of it this way. It doesn't matter as far as our agenda is concerned. It matters for a whole bunch of other reasons. But as far as our agenda is concerned in terms of promoting an agenda, we have to be ready to challenge both. The Rauner administration has terrible numbers. So what good is having a Latina as lieutenant governor? What good is having a Latina as a state controller? What good is having more members of the Latino Legislative Caucus if we can't change these numbers?
Right on.
And so we must challenge both. We must challenge the next governor, and we must start that immediately. In January, when people are sworn in. And I'm confident that we can do that. I'm not thinking that, oh, yo no sé si se puede. Vamos a tratar. We can do it.
Yes.
We can do it with strong leaders like Representative Linda Chapalavia and others who commit and who you hold accountable. Every legislator, Latino legislator who didn't show up today should get phone calls from all of you.
Hey, yeah.
And ask them why. And if they had valid excuses for not being here today, then say, when will you meet with us? And send delegations of IASHE to spell things out and to lay out a work plan. We all know what to do. We know what needs to be done. We've had success in the past. We can have success in the future if we all come together. There is a better day on the horizon. I know that. If we all come together. Thank you.